In this video, we're going to be using the quadruped position to train support function of the upper and lower extremities, while at the same time establishing and maintaining ideal postural uprighting of the thoracic spine, the lumbar spine, and the pelvis. Before we begin exercising in quadruped, we're going to go over establishing ideal support uprighting of the body and creating proper activation and pressurization. And we like to use dog in the house to begin with. So first, begin by establishing proper hand support, connecting the upper body towards the table through the hands. I want to make sure that the shoulders are always kept away from the ears and spread wide. Quite often what we see is either the shoulders are shrugging up towards the ears, or there's a tendency to have the shoulder kind of internally rotated with the shoulder blade tipping forward or coming around the rib cage too far. So we want to make sure that we're spreading back and wide as much as possible and lifting the head back into position, creating a balanced co-activation of the muscles that come from the spine to the shoulder blade, the muscles that come from the shoulder blade to the rib cage, creating a proper uprighting and lengthening of the thoracic spine so that the shoulder blade and the thorax are connected and held nice and securely. So separate, wide apart, shoulders away from ears, chin tucked, head held high. The chest is pulling away from the table. Now, this isn't like a serratus exercise where you're just simply pulling the shoulder blade around the rib cage. We want instead to set those shoulder blades and bring the rib cage to the shoulder blade. Coming down, we're going to create proper support through the legs. So we want to make sure that the tibia are slightly in internal rotation. So you want to feel your heels pulling towards the outside and the buttocks is sitting in between the heels. The knees are going to be about shoulder width apart. From there, we create ideal pressurization through the abdominal canister. And I really want to feel pressure into the backside of the abdominal wall. From here, pelvis should be neutral. We don't want to see a dishing of the lower back, nor do we want to see the lower back in curvature like that, which is what we very typically see when people have an abnormal gripping strategy through the abdominal wall. So the abdominal wall needs to be relaxed, creating length through the entire spine from the sacrum all the way to the back of the head. Now we have a little bit of excessive curvature here, so with my fingers on her spine, I want her to feel herself pulling her tailbone towards the heels, so I can feel this lifting into me. A little bit too far, so we're just going to relax right there, always creating that neutral position. So from there, now that we've established this basic position, we want to start working on activation. So I'm going to have her press her shins into the table with pretty good force, and we don't want to have the spine distort. So she's going to be catching that force with her hands as she pushes in with her legs. So the legs are pushing into the table and she's equally pushing with her hands to not move the body, but instead we're trying to create length through the spine. So what I should see is as she's pushing with her legs and catching with her hands is that the entire body begins to lift towards the ceiling. I should see and feel activation of the muscles between the shoulder blades and a strong activation through the abdominal wall. Now that's the basic position of dog in the house. Now from here we can begin to challenge how well she can connect one shoulder blade to her rib cage by beginning to unweight one hand. Now as she does that, she needs to really go slow and only remove the hand like 1 ounce at a time, and always being sure we're creating this ideal connection of the shoulder blade to the thorax and keeping the head up into this position here, not allowing the chest to drop forward between her shoulder blades. So I'm going to keep my hand on her back, my other hand on the top of her chest, making sure we have ideal connection as she begins to unweight her right hand. Now, as soon as you move one hand of support, the leg on this side and this hand, that oblique line should be taking up the difference. So you should be feeling yourself forced to press a little harder with the right leg and the left hand as the right hand begins to unweight. So we're going to repeat that one more time, creating more support through the right leg, more support through the left hand and shoulder as she begins to unweight her hand. Perfect, and back down. Now we can add a little bit of dynamic movement to this exercise by having her go through the entire same sequence, but this time as she's pressing with her legs, her upper extremities are going to allow her legs to win a little bit, very slowly, and as she's pressing, she's going to be lifting as she moves forward. So it's forward and up, really slow movement, and then back down. Really pulling up with the head to try and keep that position there, and back down. Now what I'm seeing here is as she's lifting this, she's pulling her shoulder blade back. That's not an ideal pattern, so we're going to let the shoulder blade move towards the elbow as she lifts up and down. And I don't want to see curvature here. So I'm going to place my hands on her fingers. I want her to push into my hand as she comes forward. Automatically, we're creating a better pattern. And then back, and then up one more time. And back. Okay, that's exercising in the dog in the house position. Next, we're going to move into quadruped. Okay, so the next step in the sequence is to move into quadruped. So from the dog in the house position, we're going to have the hands move forward just a little bit, like that. We're going to be using all the same activation, all the same support, all the same connections. So again, head held high, pressure through here. She's going to push through her legs and come up and forward into quadruped. Now from this position here, we're going to do the very similar movements. We're going to begin to dynamically move the one arm forward and back. And while she's doing that, making sure that we keep connection between the left shoulder blade and the rib cage, and really building a strong connection of the leg on the same side into the table as well. Now the next step then would be to create dynamic movement of one lower extremity. So now again, we're creating proper support through the upper extremities, head is lifted, we're still pressurizing the exact same way through here, but she's going to begin to slide one leg forward and back. Now, before we do that, it's important to make sure that as the leg is sliding, and if you're moving the leg on the foot, that the pelvis isn't dropping, nor is it side bending. So we want to create always neutral lumbar spine, neutral pelvis, and proper uprighting through the thoracic spine as well. So I'm going to hold my hands, feeling that she maintains pressure in the abdominal cylinder, and I want to make sure that her pelvis stays neutral as she slides her right leg back. And forward, she's going to bring it as far forward as she can before she distorts her posture. And we're just going to slowly slide back and forth. Now I'm seeing her beginning to drop here, so we need to create that uprighting in here. So she does well here, so I'm going to be a little bit more focused here, making sure this stays ideally positioned. So I'm going to have her move her right leg again, really paying attention to what's happening in here. And back. and back again, and forward. And she's going to pull as far forward as she can. Much better. And back to quadruped. The next step then would be to move into a dynamic quadruped position. The next progression will be to create a differentiated quadruped position. So Lana's going to bring one hand forward, and she's going to bring the opposite lower extremity forward. And we're going to be creating support through these 2 points on this oblique line while she brings her body weight forward and back. Always creating that ideal activation and lifting and back, pushing in through her leg, pushing in through her arm, lifting as she comes forward and back, nice and slow, creating this dynamic, differentiated position of the extremities as we floss the connections and the movements necessary for proper crawling and back. Perfect. Very good. And so there you have it. We have training in the quadruped position, beginning with dog in the house, moving all the way up into a dynamic differentiated position. Thank you.